Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ASEAN for the People Conference 2025, and welcome to Room ASEAN Vive. We will soon begin our last session for today, D3, the imperative of rule of law for political, economic, and social development, which will be conducted in English. Bagi yang membutuhkan penerjemah ke dalam bahasa Indonesia, silakan ambil perangkat yang tersedia di meja dekat pintu masuk. Saat meninggalkan ruangan, mohon tinggalkan perangkat tersebut di tempat duduk Anda. We kindly ask all participants to take their seats as we will begin shortly. To start our session, D3, the imperative of rule of law for political, economic, and social development, I would like to invite Togi Pangaribuan, Permanent Lecturer and Assistant Professor, Faculty of Law, Universitas Indonesia, Jakarta-based lawyer, who will moderate this session. Mr. Togi, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Let's give this last round of the day a more thunderous applause, please. Thank you. Just to check that we're still having that high spirit as we do when we started the day and the conferences. We have a very interesting topic today, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And we have an excellent list of panelists, the who's who, especially in Indonesia, on this topic. Let me just read out their short bios while I call them up on stage. The first one is a very senior figure that comes from my, obviously, favorite law school in Indonesia, arguably the best school in Indonesia. Professor Jimli Ashidiki is an influential Indonesian legal academic and public figure. He is notable for being the first Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court of Indonesia and establishing the court's modern constitutional review system. He is also an academic at the University of Indonesia, and his legal contributions include pioneering work on constitutional law and ethics. He has authored more than 60 academic publications, as well as hundreds of articles and papers. He has also served as a legal advisor during Indonesia's post-New Order transitions. Let's give a more thunderous round of applause for Prof. Jimli Ashidiki. Prof, please. 60, okay. More than 80 academic publications. I was made to correct that. Thank you, Prof. Our second speaker is Ravi Valur. He is a 35-year veteran of the trade. Ravi has reported from across Asia and the US, formerly foreign editor and Southeast Asia bureau chief of the Straits Times. He is much at ease with global business and macroeconomic issues as he is with diplomacy and international politics. Ravi is also a Jefferson Fellow and has previously worked with Bloomberg News, Time Warner Magazines, and Agency France Presse. Last but not least, we have Jonathan Gabriel Mendoza. Jonathan is currently a private practitioner of law engaged in litigation, labor, and corporate practice in the Philippines. Simultaneous to his work as an attorney, he is a university professor at the International Studies Department of De La Salle University in Manila. He taught courses on Introduction to Global Society, Contemporary World, European Governments, and Contemporary Issues in Europe, and International Law. Let's again give a round of applause for our panelists. So again, as introduced, my name is Togi Pangaribuan, and I've been given the task to moderate our discussion today. And as the title would suggest, our discussion today talks about the imperative of rule of law for political, economic, and social development. Before I go into a bit of brief background, and then the panelists will take their turn, some ground rules perhaps. I'll do an intro, and then I'll set out the ground rules, how we are going to conduct our discussions today. And then we'll let the panelists take turns in providing their insights, providing us with knowledge. And then we have discussants that will provide commentaries and ask questions. We have representatives from the Cambodian Institute for Democracy in Cambodia. We have a representative from Luta Hamutuk from Timor-Leste. We have a representative from Pusat Komas from Malaysia. And then we have a representative from Kontras from Indonesia as well. So after the panelists take their turn to speak, we'll open up the first commentaries to the discussants, and then we'll open up to the floor if they have any questions to the panelists. So, Prof. Jimli, Jonathan, and Ravi, rule of law is a very important cornerstone. It is also mentioned specifically in the ASEAN Charter that each nation should provide every effort to create a clean and provide a stable judiciary that would in turn help ensure, for example, flow of investment and access to justice. But from what we're seeing day to day, there is a sense that the rule of law is eroding across all regions, not just in Southeast Asia. There is an increase in corruption. There is an increase in politicization of the judiciary. There is also increase in bribery and corruption and selective enforcement of law. So I think that sets the frame of our discussion this afternoon. Um, I'll give questions to each one of you and then 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully 5 minutes, to answer the questions and provide your insights and share your wisdom and knowledge with all of us today. So my first question is to Prof. Jimli, if I may, Prof. Countries in Southeast Asia, they've faced various challenges in institution building, especially to make courts independent and credible. However, we've encountered malpractice such as bribery, nepotism, or selective enforcement. In your view and experience, why do you think these maleficent practices have happened and have continued to happen? What is the genesis? Why are these things still happen as we see day to day, especially in Indonesia? Probably Prof. Jimli?
Thank you very much, Mr. Togi, who chair our discussion. Once again, I would like to thanks to the organizer inviting me to have me here. And of course, I must answer your questions. But before that, the imperatives of judiciary, the rule of law is very pivotal in democratic systems anywhere. All countries have their own systems of politics, government systems, presidential system, parliamentary system, quasi-presidential, quasi-parliamentary. The difference is only the relation between executives and legislature. But in regards to the positions of the third power, all countries have the same ideals, same views, that the judiciary must be independent, must be spirited, skewed from politic, independent judicial power. And the problem is that beside it is very important, this pivotal role taken by the judiciary, it is also the science or when we talk about the value, the substantive democracy, it depends on the rule of law, depends on the judiciary. Because people talk about democracy, usually is only taken for granted about the substantive meaning of democracy. Usually only procedural and formalistic democracy based on majority rules. Yeah, which group have majority power, majority vote, then he is the one who should determine what is right, what is wrong, what is constitutional, what is not. So because that we need the judiciary independently, you call it checking the power of the executive and legislature. Like our experience now, you know that the the coalitions of the government is very, very strong. So the power in the executive and in the legislature are the same. What they will say about truth, and it is truth because of just majority rules, the rule of the majority. Because of we need, the third power. Now this is what we construct from very beginning of the reform era. In 2003, we established a constitutional court, actually following Thailand. Thailand established constitutional court in 1998. We established in 2003. South Korea earlier than us, another 10 years before Thailand in 1988. Why we need constitutional court? Because we have to check and balancing the power of politics in legislature and in the executives. Without that, the meaning of substantive democracy will be formalistic. So, although the number of justices in the court is only 9 persons, they can annul, declare unconstitutional the whole of a law, decided by the parliament and the president. The president elected by the people, the parliament, 700 persons, also elected directly by the people, but the 9 justices not directed by the people. So always, the president and the government and a member of parliament got angry any time the constitutional court declare unconstitutional a law. So, but this is the most important to have substantiations the meaning of democracy itself. And in Southeast Asia, I think there are 10 countries have different models of court system, like in the Philippines and then in Singapore, they have only single court, apex. But in Indonesia, in Thailand, we have dual apex. We have Supreme Court for ordinary cases, and we have Constitutional Court dealing with the constitutionality of public policies. And in Cambodia, they have council, not a court, but also Supreme Court and Constitutional Council. And in some, like for example in Vietnam, they don't have any court like Constitutional Court, and even they don't have mechanism of judicial review of law. So the variety of practices about the rule of law in South Asian countries is very, varieties. And in Indonesia, we try to strengthen always the existence of both the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court. Of course, in these 23 years, we have, up and down. In my period, 5 years, yes, maybe this is biased, but I said this is the best, the best independent. And then the second period, we still high performance, high independence, but we already have, issues related to result of general elections disputes. And finally, in 2013, the chairman, Akil Muhtar, was caught by KPK, yeah? and now he is in jail, I think for life. For life. and then the third period, there is another person's, Patrialis Akbar. So when the institutions is highly performs and considered very important, so everybody will say, oh, we have to take, we have to try to influence, starting from the recruitment of the new judges. So one of the problem is about uh, recruitment system. So because of that, after my retirement, I propose that the system is not 5 yearly anymore, not based on periodical uh, years for 5 years, because it is very close to the dynamic of 5 yearly politics. So I propose, and luckily, uh, 10 years later, it is already changed to from period system to age system. So until now, the age of retirement of the judges is 70, while I'm now not yet 70 until now, just 60, 69. Should be like that. So uh, uh, now I hope that the independence of this judicial system, especially regarding the constitutional court system, will be better than in the past time. But of course, in the transitional period, there are some, issues related to the uh, understanding of the way we have 9, 3 elected by the parliament, another 3 elected by the president, and another 3 elected by Supreme Court. Now, from the very beginning, I always said this is elected by, not elected from, because I am involved in writing the constitutions reform, in 2000, that the word is 3 elected by, not from. Because if you understand it as from parliamentary, 3 from the president, meaning that this is our delegates, so we can recall them. If you do not do something, if you make bad ruling, not in line with my interest, with my view, meaning you are against our position, so we can recall you. So this meaning, this understanding is starting from 2012 no, 2000, 2 years ago, when the deputy chief justice of the court was recalled by the parliament. His name is Aswanto. And then, as a founder of the Constitutional Court, I invite all the retired justices, and we get a meeting. I said, this is very dangerous. We have to avoid this. We have to write something to the president. And then we invite also Mahfud MD. He was coordinating minister during the time. We discussed with him, please make the president understand that this is not right if the parliament recall the judge, because they are independent. This is not recalling. You don't have any right to recall, because it 3 elected by, you are just elector. You are not just like the president elect 3 judges from the government. It is not from the government. So they are not belong to the government. So they are free. So I urge the president to not to sign any decree, to fire Aswanto. But 1 week later, he signed the decree. Oh, no, I got very, very angry. But we have no power, so it's only angry. It's okay. But that's good examples how we have to, always scrutiny, always check. Yeah, this is for the sake of the independence of the judiciary. And the last one, the last event is related to the very well-known rulings of Constitutional Court related to the age of presidential candidate. This is something to do with the chairperson, with the Chief Justice Anwar Usman. He is the uncles of the Gibran, and he is the husband of Joko Widodo's sister. So this became a very big problem. And I was invited during that time to chair the Ethics Council, and we fired him. We fired him from his position as the Chief Justice, not as the member. Why? If dismissed from membership, meaning there must be a presidential decree, his brother-in-law. Okay, so we try not to do that. We just dismiss him from his position as the Chief Justice. Plus 3 conditions. 1, he may not be elected anymore as new chairman, new Chief Justice. 2, he may not be involved in cases dealing with disputes, yeah, election dispute related to the political party chaired by his nephew, that is PSI. And the third, he may not be involved in electoral disputes related to presidential elections. So these 3. And Alhamdulillah, the 2024 general election and finishing in the Constitutional Court, running well, and everything okay. Now, only about the issue, because Gibran is already in the position of vice president. So until 2029, the issue will not finish. Is let them make a public discussion about that. But this is a good lesson for us to maintain the importance of independence and professional and the court with quality and integrity. So because of that also, I always promote that in Indonesia, beside rule of law, we should promote also a rule of ethics. One day we'll have 3 apexes of court system: Supreme Court, Constitutional Court, and National Ethic Courts. So this is my dream. Yeah, I think. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Prof. Jimli. That was a very insightful discussion on rule of law from a historical standpoint and how it's excuse me, from a historical standpoint and how rule of law in Indonesia, it has progressed from substantive is a push towards a more substantive democracy rather than a procedural one. You've taken us through time with Akil Mukhtar, Patrialis Akbar, up to the age requirement for a presidential candidate, and your future views on establishing a court of ethics, Professor. Thank you. I'll move on now to Ravi. So I think Indonesia and probably the Philippines, we share a common disease in corruption. How corruption erodes the rule of law, and it erodes especially the business and investment climate. Now we want to learn from Singapore. Yeah, we want to learn from Singapore, from your from your experience, from your practice, from your knowledge. What can countries do to reform its legal system, its governmental structure, in order to attract more FDI and essentially to establish or erect a good rule of law in that country? Ravi, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Turkey. And thank you, FPCI and Pakdino, for inviting me back time and time again. It's always wonderful to be in Indonesia and in Jakarta. You know, some of what you framed, we are mercifully spared all that. You know, if you talk about corruption, maybe we are among the cleaner places on earth. You know, well, yeah, I mean, you know, they used to say about Singapore that it's a fine city, and that has many meanings, you know. But essentially, it starts with the personal safety and security of the person, you know, the rule of law. And then it's about the safety of property. And finally, these days, and when it comes increasingly to the economy that we are in, it's about intellectual property protection. And if you look at all these three, I think Singapore scores fairly heavily. And if you look at FDI stats for ASEAN, you would wonder why a tiny city state, 6.5 million people, should soak up more than 50% of the FDI that comes into ASEAN. When there are huge population countries around us with great mineral resources, with everything, why do they come to a place like Singapore? And I would think that it begins with the rule of law as it is laid down, as it is implemented. And let me just, since I'm sitting before an audience of Indonesians, let me begin with an example where an Indonesian was involved. We had this case called the Parti Liani case, which is about an Indonesian lady who was working in the home of a very powerful man in Singapore. And this lady was asked to also help out in the home of this gentleman's son. And she resented it, and she said she would complain to the government that this is unauthorized. You asked me to work in another home. And that family fired Parthi, and then sent her home with 2-hour notice, and then filed a police complaint of theft. And that 2 months later, when she came back to look for another job, she was picked up at the airport and detained for on the charges of theft, domestic theft and dwelling. Now, 6 years later, the High Court overturned, that thing, castigated the police officers. Now, we're talking about somebody at, I don't want to say the lowest level of society, but let's say the one of the lowest, one of the weakest sections of society, a domestic helper from a foreign country in it. That is protection at one level. The other protection, rule of law as applied is, you might have heard the case of a minister, Ishwaran. What happened was, that a big billionaire, hotelier, who brought F1 into and runs the F1 in Singapore. Minister was convicted of. He actually accepted, some of the charges, and he went to jail. So you see, at one level, at the bottom, and at the very high level, a minister losing his job over what? Over free concert tickets, over maybe bottles of whiskey or a Brompton bicycle or something like that. In most countries, they feel sorry for him. But Singapore, I'm getting distracted by somebody really talking there at the back. Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Yeah. So, that's how it is. And taken to another level, for us, rule of law is policy at one level, but it's also strategy. When you have a small state, the small state has to be protected by law from bigger states. That's why you might wonder why we took such a strong position on the South China Sea, for instance. We're not a claimant party to the South China Sea, but we want the rule of law to go. So we stood up for that. We stood up for Ukraine when the Russians invaded Ukraine. It's not that we do not understand the Russian position, or rather we understand, and I'm not saying we are sympathetic to the Russian position, but we understand where they're coming from, what prompts or provokes certain behavior from Moscow. But we cannot afford to endorse it or to back it, because if we were to endorse that action, then maybe not just Malaysia. you know, so we have people around us. Not that it'll ever happen, but so these are the uh, uh, elements that make up. And the final element is that once the rules are there, it is the application. The fairness, the transparency involved, and there's this old saying that CJ here will endorse, which is justice delayed is justice denied. And I think the speed of the delivery of law is also important, and we do very well there. And today, what has become a factor of our society, which is the rule of law, we have turned it into a soft power asset as well. The world comes to us for arbitration. I think after London, you might agree, Singapore is one of probably there we go, big centers for arbitration and mediation today. And left to ourselves, we don't want the court process to drag on. We'd rather settle it at the arbitration or mediation level, and then, the courts at a. So that's the scenario. Is that good enough?
Thank you, Ravi. I note that for rule of law in Singapore, the safety and security of property, of assets, and individual, and the importance of policy and strategy and the strict implementation of rule of law from a Singapore POV as a small nation state is very important, and that both serves as the bedrock of why rule of law is very strong in Singapore. Thank you very much for that. Lastly, Jonathan, I'll turn to you. We'll talk about something else that is also an element of rule of law, which is participation, engagement, and involvement of civil society in rule of law, especially to access of justice as well. Um, Care to comment on how Philippines, the civil society is contributing to rule of law and access to justice? I mean, if you have comments to the corruption practice in the Philippines and its involvement in the judiciary and the rule of law, be my guest as well. Please, Jonathan, thank you very
So,
much.
thank you everyone for attending our session and good afternoon. Thank you to FPCI as well and to Professor Jalal. It's
Is it on? Okay.
Hello, is this better?
Yeah, much better.
So again, good afternoon, and thank you very much to FPCI for inviting me here to this conference. So just to add to what Ravi just was talking about, how clean Singapore is, um, I think we will have to be the very stark contradiction to that, the Philippines. Unfortunately, corruption in the Philippines is um, we're suffering from it, and unfortunately, we're very good at it, right? You cannot imagine the ways that corruption happens, even at the lowest levels. Okay, as simple as getting away from a traffic ticket, or as I was discussing with Professor Togi earlier, enforcing a decision that has already been declared final by a court. Okay, so it is systemic, it's cultural, even unfortunately. Okay, and so how do we ensure then that communities, particularly minorities, have access to justice? I'd like to talk about a particular group that I feel, which is apt for this conference. Um, I feel that this group has not been talked about enough. Since this is the ASEAN for the People's Conference, then it must include everyone. Um, I like to talk about the plight of indigenous peoples. Okay, this is an issue that is quite close to my heart. as I was a volunteer during my law school days. So definitely, indigenous peoples are everywhere in Southeast Asia. Apart from Thailand, everyone else in Southeast Asia was colonized by a European power. And these indigenous peoples have been in their ancestral land for centuries, even before the European colonizers arrived. And they have been there, the ancestors have been there, and the ancestors of their ancestors. Okay. And I believe they're not talked about as much as they should be talked about, especially because everyone's embarking on massive infrastructure projects. There's a massive scramble for resources. You need to drill. You need to find where the oil or the gas is. You need to find where the minerals are. Okay, all of these factor in as to why I believe indigenous peoples must be included in the conversation. So, and in addition to that, there is no international treaty right now covering and protecting indigenous peoples. There is a UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but there is yet no binding treaty protecting indigenous peoples. So, what has been the Philippine experience in protecting indigenous peoples? So, for the Philippines, we have a lot of indigenous peoples, particularly close to the border with Malaysia. We also have some indigenous tribes up in the mountains. So it's quite vast. So, what has been our experience? We have enacted our own domestic law in 1997, protecting indigenous peoples. And what's remarkable about this law is that for the first time, indigenous people's rights were protected. So they receive a share from revenue in case oil, gas, or other minerals are found in their ancestral land. And their customs, their practices are respected. And most importantly, before any drilling, any search for resources happens in their ancestral land, they will need the consent of the tribal leader. So that's how the Philippines protects indigenous peoples. Um, Unfortunately, it was not unfortunately, but interestingly, it was questioned at our Philippine Supreme Court, and fortunately, uh, was ruled as constitutional. So it was upheld as valid. So at present now in the Philippines, the practice is before any large multinational enters and starts to drill for minerals, it will need to talk to the tribal leader first and get their consent. Okay. Um, so does the ASEAN need to protect IP rights? Absolutely, right? There's no question about that. And this can be done through robust legislation, which must be domestic in nature. So each country would, I believe, have to have their own Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. And are they antithetical to development? So is giving access to justice to indigenous peoples antithetical to economic development? Of course, every country would want to develop. Every country would want to exploit the natural resources in their own country. I don't think it is antithetical. It is actually necessary for economic development. That to be able to access the resources that's been given to us, we must include everyone, including indigenous peoples. And if there is a potential project that is harmful to indigenous peoples, then it must be, there must be a creative solution around it. And in Manila, there is a dire need for clean and running water, a reliable source of water. And there was a planned dam to be created near Manila. Unfortunately, in order to build that dam, you need to flood an entire community of indigenous peoples. And that's why the dam project did not push through. So there's been no creative solution yet, but at least we know this particular community, this very minor community, no matter how small they are significant, and they must be included in the equation in economic development. So, in bringing them access to justice, then they must be part of the conversation, and they must be protected by law, because it's not every day that you encounter an indigenous person, right? They're up in the mountains or in the coastal areas, but they exist. They are Southeast Asian, just like you and I. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, on that valuable lesson on how Philippines protect the indigenous people and what we can learn from it. So I think I'm gonna open up the floor. I'm gonna open up the discussion to the discussants. I think we have, as I've mentioned earlier, I think we have four discussants representing Cambodia, Timor-Leste, Malaysia, and Indonesia. I'll open up the floor first for the Cambodian Institute for Democracy. Do we have a rep? Yes, please. Can you introduce your? Are you representing the Cambodian Institute for Democracy?
Yes.
Okay, please. Can you stay? Are you Horan Burnhang? Am I pronouncing your name right? Apologies. Okay, please. Yes, yes, please.
Hi.
Yeah.
Let's go with the microphone. I got few questions.
If
Okay,
it's
okay, okay.
possible, if you can limit one, because I want to
Okay,
give
I will
an
go quick.
opportunity for the other
Okay.
discussants as well.
My
Thank
name
you.
is Hein. I am a program coordinator of the Cambodia Institute for Democracy. Earlier, I heard the panelists mention about the Singaporean style, like to be specific about the rule of law and corruption framework. So, if Singaporean style is actually working, the framework of corruptions actually better comparing to the ASEAN member state, why not the government of the ASEAN adapt or learn from Singapore? Thank you. So my very first questions.
So, Ravi, please. If you can keep it short, we have three more discussions. Thank you.
I'd have no complaint if the rest of ASEAN wanted to, just follow the Singapore model. And I mean, without being facetious, Singapore does a lot of training for other countries. In the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy has particular programs where civil servants from around Asia and now from Africa also come and sit. I'm sure Singapore would actually welcome if any country showed interest in adopting whole or part of its systems. It only reaffirms what Singapore has always believed in. But my experience, you introduced me as 35 years of journalism, is actually 45 years of journalism, but that's fine. Is that different countries have, their systems are based on local realities and all that. It's not every system is easily transposed or transplanted elsewhere. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Mr. Jose Alves da Costa from Timor-Leste. If you have comments or questions to the panelists, please.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you. My name is Jose Alves da Costa. I'm executive director of one NGO in Timor-Leste. His name Lutahamutuk. It means struggle together. So here I'm really appreciate with the explanation. So as we know that in Timor-Leste is one of new country, and yeah, it's not so good in terms of the democracy, transparency, accountability, and participation. People in the development process because of some of seems like it's other country. So who is the lead? He's have power to intervene in all of system, including judicial system. I have a small question here. As we know that everyone in government institution, they have a high background study, like in university, professor, doctors. But why they have mindset that the corruption is not is not how call it crime. Yeah, because the minister or director, they feel that corruption is like so. I don't know why. Maybe someone can explain it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Da Costa. Because the only person in the room having a professorship degree is Prof. Jimli, then I think I'll direct the question to Prof. Jimli if you don't mind, Professor. This is also because I'm doing my doctoral dissertation. I've been doing it for 5 years. I haven't finished. So you are definitely the highest ranking academic on the stage, Professor. So please, I think the question is, we see a lot of highly educated people in government. Why is it that these highly educated people in government, despite their presence, we still have a lot of corruption? I think that was more or less the question, Mr. De Costa. Please,
Yeah.
Professor.
I think you are also from your G that is also professor.
Just by appearance,
Oh,
Professor.
yeah,
Yeah.
appears, yeah. Okay, uh, the problem of corruptions, especially in big countries like Indonesia, is very complex. It's happening all the time, yeah, since the old order, the new order. And when we reformed in 1998, well, the first uh, ideals is anti-corruptions, anti-collusion, nepotism. But now already 23 years, 25 years, is still there. So this is systemic. We cannot solve this rhetoric. Yeah, we have to make uh, reform to transform the system. Like, for example, uh, how we strengthen the supervisory functions effectively. For example, uh, uh, atasan, sub, I mean the boss,
Yeah.
yeah, must have responsibility. If, for example, director general, yeah, has to be responsible if the director under him, under his responsibility, uh, involved in corruptions. Yeah. Because in criminal law is the responsibility is individual, yeah, in nature. But in the administrations, the upper officer must be responsible. If he does not resign, then his boss must fire him. If the dirigent got caught, uh, the minister must resign or the president fire him. So this system should be installed in the law. Okay, so all the public official, yeah, in any rank has his own responsibility to avoid and to prevent the corruptions in his responsibility. So this is very important. We cannot depend only to the criminal justice system because you know that the prison in Indonesia now already 208% overcapacity. Overcapacity 208%. So how many more, you know, convict we have to send? This is I always discuss with the Attorney General, the Jaksa Agung. How many more? Yeah. So we have to make the preventive action and then strengthening the system of supervisory and also ethical system we have to install, including the ethical code as I promote. So rule of law, yeah, cannot work without the functions, of a rule of ethics. Like, for example, Earl Warren in 1953 Chief Justice of American Supreme Court, he said, in a civilized life, law just floats in a sea of ethics. If ethics in the country does not work, law will not prevail for justice.
So, Ravi, I know you want to add on, but can we move to the questions first? I'll give you an opportunity at the closing remarks if that's possible.
Just want to just one
Okay,
comment.
just
Yeah,
if you
thank
can make it very brief. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So your question about why such highly educated people tend to be corrupt and all that. One of the lessons from the work of Dr. Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh, the Nobel laureate who is now effectively president of the country, is that the people at the bottom of the pyramid and the women have the most ethics in terms of returning the money that they borrow. You know, it is the rich people who try to cheat and dodge, whether it's paying taxes or whether it's repaying bank loans. But at the bottom of the pyramid, there exists a higher level of ethics and morality than some of us have.
I'd like to invite Mr. Balamuri from Pusat Komas, Malaysia. If you have if we can make it very brief, apologies.
Hi,
Thank
thank
you.
you. My name is Yoga. I'm from Pusakomas in Malaysia. Thank you, Prof. Jimli, Mr. Ravi, and Mr. Jonathan for your input. I was particularly drawn by Mr. Jonathan's presentation on access to justice. So, since we are here for an ASEAN conference, I would like to talk about justice at ASEAN level, a transnational level. So, as you know, the Suluk community has been there has been sort of a basketball game between Malaysia and the Philippines on their recognition. So, and of course, the issues between Malaysia and Singapore with drugs, people being detained and being executed. So, as an ASEAN, where are we at addressing transnational issues of justice like this? And how do we solve it? And of course, how do we use our existing ASEAN mechanisms to address these issues? Also, just to add, just another question on.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
Yoga. Apologies.
Okay, sure. No worries.
I'll let Jonathan answer. If you can keep it brief, we have one more discussion. Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, so how do we ensure that there is? I think to get to your point, you're asking how do we ensure that there is justice operating transnationally, right? Okay. This is a very loaded question, but I'll have to keep it simple. The idea of justice in each country might be culturally different, but it more or less touches on the same principles. So I'll give you an example. This one is at the heart of of Filipinos, our migrant workers. Okay, we send about 10% of our population abroad. Every Filipino has for sure a loved one who is abroad, and unfortunately, some of our domestic workers, even working all over Southeast Asia, have been executed. There's at least one that was executed in Singapore. This was a lady. And to touch on quite a touchy subject diplomatically, one Filipina domestic helper was on death row here in Indonesia. It's a touchy topic, and we were waiting with bated breath as to whether she will be executed. And I think at the last moment there was a call between the two presidents to at least stay the execution. So at least that shows there is friendship. At the very least, there's mutual respect. But of course, every country's idea of justice is different. But if it means saving a life of a fellow Southeast Asian, then I guess the friendship among Southeast Asians is quite useful. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Lastly, we have a discussant from Indonesia, Mr. Hans Giovanni. Please, one question. Thank you.
Thank you. As Prof. Jimli mentions, Indonesia has a very good safeguard on rule of law and human rights through our constitution amendments. Also, many let's say, landmark decisions during Jimli's court, during Prof. Jimli's era in the Constitutional Court. The problem is that there is a gap between normative safeguard of human rights and the implementations, especially by law enforcement officials, like, for example, the police and, to some extent, Indonesian military and even the general attorney. The questions would be how to fill in that gap to make sure that the safeguard on the normative level, on the constitutions, on human rights, is also being implemented, especially by Indonesian law enforcement officials. Thank you.
Address that gap between the normative rules and the implementation.
Yeah, it is very complex questions, and of course we need the process by and by. That as a big democracy, Indonesia is called to be the third largest democracy in the world. But for me, Indonesia is not the third, but the first largest. Why? If we count from the elections of the head of the states, 3 of 6 presidents, around the world, along the history, 3 of the 6 are presidents of Indonesia. Number 1, Prabowo, last year, elected by 97,000 people. Million. The second is Joko Widodo, 2019, 84 million. And the third and the fourth, America, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The seventh, last elections, Russia, Vladimir Putin, 80%, 86%. And the number 6, SBY, 2014. So meaning 3 of the 6 are from Indonesia. So Indonesia is the first largest democracy in terms of the quantity. But Alhamdulillah, the quality is now, this year, number 59, the rank in the world. So that's the quality. So we need, to have a long time agenda to improve the quality of democracy and the rule of law. So I think from this forum, I would like to tell you, 3 weeks ago, I have a meeting with Minister of Human Rights, and I proposed, and he agreed with my ideas. We need to have an endowment fund or trust fund in democracy, human right, and nature's right in Indonesia. And it is the benefits not only for Indonesian, but for Southeast Asian countries. I told him like that. Oh, he said, that's very good, sir. So I think, this is also the second thing is about the role of NGO. The role of NGO is very important also in promoting democracy, human right, and nature's right. Yeah, that's very, very important. We are not dealing only with democracy now, but also ecocracy. Yeah, ecocratian. Not only democratian, but also ecocratian. So we have to, we cannot depend on the public official, the politician. No, they are not talking about long-term period. They are talking only about 2029, another election. Now, so we need to strengthen our movement of social civil society. And Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you, in the history, Indonesia, before we established state, we have thousands or at least hundreds of civil society organization in along the countries. So until now, there is a tendency that the civil society weakened now, and this is very dangerous. We cannot let the civil society organization weaken as to the process. We have to strengthen, not only in Indonesia, of course, in the whole Southeast Asia, to make it balance with the power of formal power of the state. That's very important. Thank you.
Even though I've been warned that time is up, I'm gonna go a bit rogue and check. Do we have a questions from the floor? Okay. I'm also mindful that this has been a male-dominated forum, so I'm gonna give just one question to the lady with the white shirt, please. Just if you can keep it very short. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, but I kind of don't care. Please. I mean that in a joking way, by the way. I'm not being autocratic.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the opportunity given. My name is Yasmin, and I'm gonna go straight to the question. My question it will be that nowadays, as a law student, I can see that there's a lack of trust among young people towards the legal and political institutions. This comes from the law often being politicized and corruptions in the system, and maybe the lack of youth participation in decision making. So from the panelist perspective, because the Southeast Asia's future is really tied to its youth, how should rule of law reforms be designed not only to fix institution procedurally, but also to rebuild young people's trust in the state and its legal system? Thank you.
Brilliant last question. Thank you. Give a round of applause. So, so, so primarily Prof. Jimli and also the other panelists. I think this question sums up a lot of what we have in our heads, especially Indonesians. How do we stop rule of law from becoming rule by law so that the society is not being involved in the lawmaking? It erodes trust. So maybe this also serves as maybe closing remarks, if you can, very shortly. Maybe Prof. Jimli, do you want to start?
Yeah. So that's what I mentioned, that the role of civil society is very important. Usually, the civil society organized by young people, students, sometimes unorganized, just like 25 August. Yeah. Uh, uh, Many, and former leader doesn't know, "Oh, what is this? What is this?" Nobody know. So there is a new characters of movement, social movement. It cannot be detected before. So this is most of them as young people. So I think, yeah, not after Indonesia incidents, there are more 13 countries in the world following, using the bendera one piece. Yeah, inspired by Indonesia. Yeah, actually from other side, this is good. Yeah, for me, oh, this is very good. Also, there is a bad side, but it's good. So, how we understand this new phenomena, meaning that the informal people in out outside the formal position in the political power, executive, legislature, and also in the judiciary, there are people sponsored, not money, sponsored by young people, is had to be heard. This is very important. So because of that, I think from this gathering, I hope there is a follow up. Yeah, for example, if there is a need among the activists around Southeast Asia, we can have our forum periodically in Jakarta, in Bali. Yeah, like before we have under Minister Hasan Wirayuda, we have Bali Democracy Forum. We have to revitalize that kind, but also training, workshop, small gathering, yeah, for activists, yeah. Yes, I am prepared to participate in that kind of activities. Really, yeah, at least by prayer. Okay, thank you very much.
Very, very shortly.
Thank
Yeah,
you, thank you,
you.
Pak. When I heard that comment from you about rule of law versus rule by law, I had a sneaking suspicion that it was targeted at one of your neighboring countries where I come from. But, but
Have that here as well. So I
okay,
think what she's referring to, there's been incidents of lawmaking in Indonesia
right,
that do not involve public participation. So
exactly.
they've made it in secret and in haste. So I
All right.
think
So,
nothing
all right.
aim at Singapore.
Oh, good.
Trust me.
So I'm not at all resisting or resenting that question. It's a very valid question. But ma'am, I'd just say that intelligent governments do listen to the ground. They may not acknowledge it directly that they got corrected by feedback from the ground, but it's like journalism today. When I began my career, journalists used to talk down to the readers. Uh, you know, today we can't afford to do that. We have to listen to the readers. We get their feedback instantly. Every byline has a email address at the bottom, so you get feedback, and many of them are better informed than we are. So it's a huge challenge. Likewise, good governments will always listen to the ground, and even if they do not agree, they are aware of what the ground is saying, and in some cases they do modulate their policies uh, according to the social mores or norms as they evolve. That's my.
Yeah. So I'll make this very quick. So first, keep the fire burning, keep the passion for reform alive in your hearts and minds. And secondly, uh, even though you're still young, participate in all available decision making and um, legislation consultations, whether at the local level or at the, let's say, at the provincial or regional level and at the national level. Maximize all the opportunities you have to participate in them, and at least make your intelligent recommendations be known to policymakers. Yes.
Thank you. Let's give another round of applause for our distinguished panelists. Um, Thank you very much, Prof. Jimli, Ravi, and Jonathan for our insightful discussion this afternoon. I want to thank the discussants as well and Ms. Yasmin on the question. I hope we had a very eye-opening exercise this afternoon, and I think Prof. Jimli, Ravi, and Jonathan have tasked it up to us to follow up on this, to be very active, to ensure that rule of law in each of our respective countries and transnational in Southeast Asia remains strong. Thank you very much. I hope we all had a pleasant session, and I'll return this to the room coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists for such an insightful discussion. Everyone, once again, please give a big round of applause. Before closing this session, we invite the panelists to remain on stage for a group photo. As a token of appreciation, souvenirs on behalf of Dr. Dino Patijalal and a VCI will be presented to